Welcome again, students, in our today's online session. Okay, as you already know that we were discussing on the essay on the pleasures of no longer being very young by G.K. Chesterton. So let's proceed with the next part of this essay. Here we are in the third paragraph of the essay. I am reading for you. For instance, we have just seen a staggering turn of the wheel of fortune, which has brought all the modern material pride and prosperity to a standstill. So, students, as you already know, that here Chesterton is talking about the particular downfall of modern economy of that time, that due to that downfall or major downfall in modern materialistic progress, the people have to come to the real terms. Okay, so here he is giving that real life example, that he is saying we have just seen a staggering turn of the wheel of fortune. Staggering means shocking, something that is shocking turn. So people of that time, they had seen the shocking turn of the wheel of fortune, or the turn of events in their life that brought them to this to face this real truth, that all the modern materialistic progress and prosperity that face a standstill. And for further strengthening his idea, he is saying that America, he is giving the real example of America, which a year or two ago seemed to have become on vast El Dorado, studded with the cities of gold, is almost as much embarrassed as England, and really much more embarrassed than Ireland. So here the a year or two ago actually suggests a reference to the slump of 1931, when the great economic fall or faced happened during that time, and America, which was considered just like a vast El Dorado. So El Dorado means, actually it is a Spanish word which implying a fictitious region rich in gold. So America was just like an El Dorado, and which was full of means full of the cities of gold. And America also witnessed that great fall of economy, and thus America also felt embarrassing just like England. And perhaps here he is saying that the and really much more embarrassed than Ireland. So perhaps because Ireland is perhaps the poorest country in Europe, so America even also embarrassed much more than Ireland. So the industrial countries are actually finding it difficult to be industrial, while the old agricultural countries still find it possible to be industrious. So here Chesterton is making the point that all the so-called progressive countries or wealthy countries, they are actually finding this fact, finding themselves to be more industrial, while there are on the other side all the old agricultural countries, they still find themselves more industries means active and productive in both the sense. So now I do not pretend to have prophesied or expected this, for a man may cheerfully call a thing rotten without really expecting it to rot. So here Chesterton is making this point that he is not actually going to prophesize or going to to claim something, that because he is saying that agree the rotten here means going bad or deteriorating. So he is saying that all the all those so-called developed countries or modern countries, they fail to maintain their so-called status quo, and they felt their real deteriorating, or they got to rot means to decay, and they have to face their decay. But neither certainly did the young, the progressive, the prosperous, or the adventurous expect it. And he is also saying that but the young people who consider themselves more progressive, more modern and prosperous or adventurous, they didn't also expect it. Yet all history and culture is stiff with proverbs and prophecies telling them to expect it. So he is saying that yet our history is full of such examples or instances of our history is full of such true proverbs or sayings or prophecies which tell us the truth, the reality. But we in our young age we didn't expect it, and we were not able to understand this aspect. It means we don't learn from our history. The trouble is that they thought the proverbs and history a great deal too stiff. So he is saying that the real trouble is that the young people, they actually do not consider the proverbs and historical facts as real or as something valuable. On the other side, they treat all historical events or proverbs or worthy meaningful proverbs as something kind of stale things or stiff. Again and again, with monotonous reiteration, both my young friends and myself had been told from childhood that fortune is fickle, that riches take to themselves wings and fly, that power can depart suddenly from the powerful, the pride goes before a fall, and insolence attracts the thunderbolt of the gods. So here Chesterton is very beautifully making his point that there are tiresome repetition, monotonous repetitions of some kind of things, or uh, some kind of proverbs or sayings or truism that they we people since our childhood we used to hear the same thing repeatedly, like fortune is fickle, that riches to take themselves wings and fly, that fortune is fickle means fortune is uncertain, and the riches mean wealth has wings, and it is also uncertain, and it can disappear. The power can depart suddenly from the powerful, that the power can also depart the powerful, and all those pride results in a fall. Insolence attracts the thunderbolt of the gods. So we were also used to or adhere to be familiar of these facts, like the ways of gods, thunderbolt of the gods. But it was all unmeaning to us, and all the proverbs seemed stiff and stale, like dusty labels on neglected antiquities. So he is saying that all the learning, that all the lessons from our histories or historical facts, which are meaningful and useful in our present and future life, but we treat them as unmeaningful, okay, meaningless. And all those proverbs which contain worldly wisdom that seem as stiff and stale, it's like dusty labels, and like the old antiquities, the pieces of old antiquities. We had heard of the fall of Wolseley, which was like the crash of a huge palace still faintly rumbling through the ages. We had read of it in the words of Shakespeare, which possibly were not written by Shakespeare, we had learned them and learned nothing from them. So here Chesterton is giving an instance of the fall of Wolsey. Wolsey was actually the chief advisor and supporter of Henry the Eighth, and who also uh, actually became the who opposed Henry VIII when he wished to divorce his queen and marry another. So this ultimately led to his fall from the power. So this is actually what Chesterton is saying here, that this is the fall of Wolsey, who was once in the power, and but he has uh, faced his own downfall. So he is saying that all the pride, all our worldly status or prides, they are fickle. So still he will say who had to face his fall, and all these things we find in the work of Shakespeare, whose play Henry the Eighth, and he is also telling that perhaps the work or the words in the work might not have written by Shakespeare, but we have learned them and learned nothing from them. So he is saying that we have studied all these things in historical books and works, but still we didn't learn, or we don't learn the truth from them. We had read 10,000 times to the point of tedium of the difference between the Napoleon of Marengo and the Napoleon of Moscow. So here Chesterton is giving another example of the fall and decay of the great emperor, great warrior Napoleon. So he is saying that we had already read, or we have read about this Napoleon of Marengo and the Napoleon of Moscow. So as once Napoleon was considered the greatest warrior, when the Napoleon of Marengo actually refers to that through that particular time, or the victory, one of the greatest victories of Napoleon in his earlier career, when he fought in the year of 1800, and Napoleon of Moscow that in 1812, when he have to retreat he has to retreat confess when he had to retreat, confessing his defeat. So this is the difference between the two different time span of the same person. Once he got fame due to his greatest victory, and the other time he also faced his downfall. So here Napoleon of Moscow actually suggest the downfall of Napoleon. But we should never have expected Moscow if we had been looking at Marengo. So this is the difference which he is talking about. We knew that Charles V resigned his crown, or the Charles the First lost his head, and we should have duly remarked sic transit gloria mundi after the incident, but not before it. So here Chesterton is giving another instances of Charles V, who was the who was the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire from 1519 to 1556, when he resigned from his crown in favor of his brother. And Charles the First, who was the King of England, who was tried and executed in 1649. So these are the instances we have already studied in history, and he says that we should have duly remarked sic transit gloria mundi. So here this Latin phrase, which means that this passes the glory of this world. So what here Chesterton is saying is that truths of history which are well known, and but still those truths are not applied in our own cases, we apply them to in others cases. We had been told that the Roman Empire declined or that the Spanish Empire disintegrated, but no German ever really applied it to the German Empire, and no Briton to the British Empire. The very repetition of these truths will sound like the old interminable repetition of the truisms, and yet they are to me at this moment like amazing and startling discoveries. For I have lived to see the dead proverbs come alive. So here actually Chesterton is making this important fact or point, that we are all supposed to learn from the lessons of our history, but we do not ordinarily make use of these lessons for our own good. So we know that dictators have come and gone again and again, so great empires have flourished, and they, like the Roman empires, Spanish empire, German empires, so they have flourished, and but they also have disappeared. We know all these facts of history, but we do not apply this knowledge of history to the conditions in which we live. So the inference drawn from these instances is that when we do not apply the truths of history which are well known to ourselves before the event, we actually apply them to others. So he is saying, so now yet they are to me to this moment like amazing and startling discoveries. So now as presently Chesterton is himself become an old man, or he is in his old age, so he is saying that at this very moment these facts are these historical events or historical truths seem to him amazing or interesting, and like the startling discoveries, because this is because now he has already experienced those facts to certain point in his own life. So all those dead proverbs or those worldly saying of wisdoms now seem to him come alive. Now moving ahead, this, like so many of the realizations of later life, is quite impossible to convey in words to anybody who has not reached it in this way. So he is saying that these all the earlier above instances which Chesterton has pointed out, he is saying that all those, the understanding of those maxims or proverbs, these are the realizations, so we can only understand in our later life. So it is quite impossible to convey in words to anybody who has not reached it in this way. So he is saying that, and for making those truths to them more understandable or to be comprehensible, we cannot convey them to in words. Only the person who has reached, who has experienced them in his life, or who has reached in his older age, who has grown now, who is in his old age, can only understand them fully. It is like a difference of dimension or plane in which something which the young have long looked at rather rarely as a diagram has suddenly become a solid. So he is saying that there are certain changes which occur in the world which the young people are incapable to understand. It is only when we grow older then we are able to see them and understand them. So we are unable to realize these changes when we are young. We begin to realize them as we grow older. So this change of perspective is like something dead coming to them. It is like a diagram suddenly become a solid thing. It is like the indescribable transition from the inorganic to the organic, as if the stones, snakes, and birds of some ancient Egyptian inscription begin to leap about like living things. So he is making the comparison that all those things which we want to deliver, actually these are indescribable, and these are indescribable transition in one individual's life, and like the inorganic to the organic, or these are like the stone snakes and birds of ancient Egyptian inscription that begin to leap about like living things. So in his seemingly contradictory remark, we are able to led to see the great truth of human psychology and understanding. So he is saying that in old age we are able to see things which we fail to see in youth. So this is the one of the most important advantages of old age. The thing was a dead maxim when we were alive with youth. So it means we were not able to see those things in our young age, but we can only comprehend to understand those old maxims, or they come alive only in our later age. It becomes a living maxim when we are nearer to death. Even as we are dying, the whole world is coming to life. So this is perhaps the one of the most important advantages of old age. It is sad to note that older people realize this quite late in their life. So it is this calm, serene, and peaceful view of life which makes old age valuable to us. So this is what Chesterton has pointed here. So now we will continue this. We will hopefully we will finish this essay in our next session. So students, with this I'll wrap up this session. Okay, thank you.